Well, I'm not participating in that kind of economic totalitarianism. I believe in speech. And the channels of communication, American to American, or American to foreign, or foreigner to American, are being choked off now, especially for those who are not leftists. You don't even have to be a conservative or a constitutionalist. You can be a reasonable, rational, knowledgeable human being who doesn't agree with the left, and you are being punished, and you're being caricatured. And we cannot tolerate that as a nation. Furthermore, I'm not going to have my millions and millions of listeners and viewers be monetized by these multi-billionaire monopolists. They use your name, they use your data, they use your information, your private information without your knowledge to make money. They sell it, they trade it, God knows what they do with it. That's not part of the bargain. All you want to do is communicate. All you want is free speech. Now, of course, there are people who go on these sites who are nasty people, who are diabolical people. There are people like that in our neighborhoods, in our communities, all over our country. But Twitter doesn't really care about them. They say they do, but they don't. And I'm going to prove it to you from our friends at the Daily Wire. Louis Farrakhan's account at Twitter is still active. Louis Farrakhan, the most famous anti-Semite in America today, although there's a lot of competition for that right now, still has an active Twitter account despite routinely comparing Jews to termites, among other things. Farrakhan, head of the notorious Nation of Islam, tweeted in 2018, "I am not anti-Semite, I'm an anti-termite." Though Twitter removed the verified check from his account following a tweet about the satanic Jew in the synagogue of Satan, his account still remains active in public as of this program. The Chinese embassy in the United States, you may not know it, as they point out in the Daily Wire, but the Chinese embassy in the United States has their own verified Twitter account with over 78,000 followers. Their account is routinely used to spread Chinese Communist Party propaganda on behalf of President Xi Jinping. Now, they used Twitter to defend China's use of concentration camps the other day, in part of their ongoing genocide against Muslims. The minds of Muslim women in Xinjiang were emancipated, I'm quoting, and gender equality and reproductive health were promoted, making them no longer baby-making machines, the account tweeted, before saying the victims are more confident and independent. While the tweet has since been deleted, the account has not. New York Antifa account. For all their talk of restricting those promoting violence, Twitter still allows Antifa accounts full access to the platform, despite their by any means necessary slogan and their use of violent rhetoric and tactics. It is a Marxist, anarchist, violent organization. The account routinely doxes individuals deemed quote-unquote Nazis. In other words, anyone on the right, sharing photos and personal information in an attempt to intimidate and coerce them. The page also reports photos and videos of so-called fascists being attacked on the street and at protests with gleeful captions, you know, people eating outside peacefully at a restaurant. So their account has not been banned by Twitter. Nicolas Maduro, the fascist killing dictator of Venezuela, despite running his country into the ground and killing or jailing anyone who stood in his way, Nicolas Maduro, best known as the human rights abusing, socialism-loving dictator of Venezuela, still enjoys the use of his Twitter account. The Ayatollah Khomeini has a Twitter account. Other brutal, murdering dictators all over the world have Twitter accounts and tweet. And so they ban the President of the United States. They're banning mainstream conservatives. They're banning mainstream constitutionalists in this massive purge effort. And so there may be nut jobs. There may be violent people, but they're painting with a broad brush. They're painting with a broad brush and taking as many people, thousands, tens of thousands of people off their site and banning them. So where do they go? Where are these people going to go? Well, there's a little entrepreneur, a little company that started up called Parler. Parler. When I heard about Parler, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Parler. I don't know who these people are. It doesn't matter to me. It's competition. It's entrepreneurship. It's free speech and communication with our fellow citizens without some oligarch on the West Coast looking over my shoulder and the shoulder of my followers to determine what we can and cannot say. And what I'm telling you today, I'm old enough to tell you this, used to be basic civil liberties. That's the way it used to be. The left, the right, everybody in between understood speech, understood there was hate, understood the rest of it, but fought for speech. But not anymore. We've got the purging going on. Not the purging going on the left, not the purging going on in the Marxists, the anarchists, not the purging going on of hosts on TV and writers who refer to so many of us as neo-Nazis and all the rest. That kind of hate speech and intolerance is apparently okay on Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of them. So they've all gotten together to try and put Parler out of business. And they're also character assassinating this site by calling it a right-wing site, a controversial site. It's a platform. John Mates, Parler CEO. How are you, sir?
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Tell the nation a little bit about your background. What have you been doing? What caused you to start Parler and so forth?
Well, I'm a software engineer, so I started by developing iPhone apps, and I ran a consulting company doing that and worked for various corporations, anything from the defense industry to actually Amazon Web Services. So, a few years ago, I saw the trend and the direction we were heading, and I thought there's a need for more civil discourse for people to talk to one another, to parlay with one another, which is why when you're on Parler, you create parlays, which is the concept that you have two parties. They might not see eye to eye. They might even be violent with one another in public. But you know what? It gives them a place to come together and have a conversation and get through it together and resolve their differences. And they might leave the conversation, at least if they don't agree with each other, they'll leave the conversation feeling a little bit better about the place. So the whole concept is civil discourse, conversation. Meanwhile, not having your information sold, traded, or shared with corporations for profit. And so the idea is free speech and privacy. And so we wanted to combine those two things.